In color, the continuing story of Peyton Place. Starring Dorothy Malone as Constance Mackenzie, Ed Nelson as Michael Rossi, Ryan O'Neill as Rodney Harrington, Barbara Parkins as Betty Anderson, Tim O'Connor as Elliot Carson, Christopher Connolly as Norman Harrington, Patricia Morrow as Rita Harrington, James Douglas as Stephen Cord.
When Rodney Harrington first came back to the Peyton house, he was an unwilling visitor. He viewed his grandfather with a mixture of awe and distrust. But now he is deeply concerned about Martin Peyton's health. Rodney fears the preliminary hearing of the People versus Lee Weber will be taxing on his grandfather and cause irreparable damage to this aging man whom he's now grown to love.
Grandfather. Grandfather.
Rodney?
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you.
What time is it?
It's just past 1, sir.
Ah, my gains. I've always detested people who squander their short time on Earth with naps. Some days it's all I can do to keep my eyes open in the time it takes me to come from the dining room table to my chair. Ah, motorized baby buggy.
This room is enough to put an incurable insomniac to sleep.
There are other ways of squandering time, Rodney.
Listen, even a poor garage mechanic is entitled to some lunch.
So far from his garage?
Well, food's better here.
Oh, Rodney, I appreciate your concern, but it wasn't necessary. Believe me.
I wish I could. You know, ever since I moved into this house, it's been like a prison. It was plush and roomy, but just as effective as the one I had been released from. You, sir, were the jailer.
And now?
Now it's pretty much the same. Except you're the prisoner. And Mrs. Cord is the jailer.
Hardly. Your grandfather doesn't listen to a word I say.
Perhaps because you never say anything of interest anymore, Mrs. Cord.
Sorry if I seem to nag. It's for your own good. Frankly, I'm worried.
About what, Mrs. Cord?
Your grandfather's health.
Never felt better.
He sits up half the night reading, then collapses for an hour or two in the day in his chair. Refuses to watch his medication or his diet or his drinking. Now with the subpoena, I'm afraid.
What subpoena?
I mean, he didn't tell you.
But you're doing such a good job.
The district attorney subpoenaed your grandfather today, and I am afraid that the ordeal of going into that courtroom, submitting to endless questions could prove too much.
For whom, Mrs. Cord? My grandfather? Or you?
I should think that you, above anyone else, would want to see the man who caused Anne's death brought to justice.
We're discussing your health.
Then the discussion is over. Why don't you wash up, Rodney? I'll join you for a cup of tea.
I'd like that.
To the truth, Hannah, as we know it.
Rodney. Rodney, I know you don't especially like me or trust me, but...
That's right, Mrs. Cord. I don't trust you.
But this is for your grandfather. He's getting worse. Surely you can see that for yourself.
Well, what do you want me to do?
Talk to him. Maybe he'll listen to you.
Oh, I doubt that.
Then talk to Dr. Rossi. Get the doctor to examine him. Let the doctor decide if he's well enough to walk into that courtroom. That's all I ask. Rodney, it's for your grandfather's sake. If you love him as much as you say you do, you'll try to help him.
Mrs. Cord, he wants to testify.
Mr. Fowler can take his deposition. That's almost like testifying.
Yes, except he won't be there to answer Stephen's questions.
I'm worried, Rodney.
Yes, I know you are, Mrs. Cord. I just don't know about what.
Oh, where's Miss Nolan?
She's at the post office. Come on in. Well, how's it feel being a Carson's hired hand? Enjoy being a working wife again?
I had to get some things for the baby before I went back. You don't mind my helping Mrs. Carson out, do you?
Oh, of course not. Just as long as dinner's on the table, 7 o'clock sharp.
Your mother stopped in at the bookshop when I was picking up the mail.
Really?
She didn't come for a book. She wanted to talk to me.
Well, that's nice. You swap recipes?
I'm afraid I lost my temper.
Well, she'll recover.
Stephen, she wanted to apologize for the way she treated me before. She seemed genuinely sorry. Now that I think back on it, she seemed so vulnerable.
I think I understand it. You know, I have to admire her technique. Masterful. She comes to you not as a warrior, but as a supplicant. Begging forgiveness. How touching.
No, Stephen, you don't understand. She wasn't begging. She wasn't anything. It was as if she'd given up, as if whatever had kept her going, it just wasn't there anymore.
She's really taken you in, hasn't she?
Stephen, your mother may be on the edge of a nervous breakdown. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is that I think I might have helped.
My mother is on the receiving end for a change. She's getting back some of her own. Betty, she's not going to have a nervous breakdown. She's made of too much strong stuff for that. Now, what you've described sounds like the latest in a long line of stellar performances, and I'm not buying any of it.
Stephen, your mother has gone through terrible pressure. Now, couldn't that make her change?
Does anyone ever change, really change?
Everyone changes, you know that.
Not with the lies she's had to live with all these years. This is the woman that almost destroyed our marriage. Now she comes to you feigning a change of heart, asking you to believe her. Why?
You seem to know why. Tell me.
Because she doesn't want to testify at the hearing. And it almost worked, didn't it? I mean, that's why you came here.
I came here because I felt badly about some of the things I'd said to her.
No, you wanted me to take her name off the list of witnesses.
Maybe. Stephen, must you put her through this ordeal?
Yes, I must.
Well, why? To punish her? Are you doing this for Lee Weber or for yourself? You told me that Dr. Rossi's testimony weakened Fowler's case.
Chris Weber's testimony was extremely damaging to his brother. Now, I'm putting my mother on the witness stand because I think it is not only necessary for Lee Weber's defense, but obligatory. Period.
Well, I guess I'd better get back to the Carsons.
How long are you going to be helping out with the baby?
Oh, not long, just for a couple of more days. Oh, dinner won't be at 7 sharp. I'll be expecting you for cocktails.
Oh, I'll look forward to that, Mrs. Gordon. Hey. I know this isn't an easy time for you, for us. But please just bear with me, huh?
Of course, I love you. I just worry about you.
Here's what I did, Sandy. I took Cord's case and I laid it out in my mind. I knew all his strong points, all his weak points, and I was emotionally tuned to perfection. I was like a fighter who had trained just right. You know what I mean? I was ready for Stephen Cord. But what kills me, though, is that little edge of politeness he uses, his courtroom etiquette. It hides the fact that he's out for blood every time he gets some poor, unsuspecting soul on that stand.
Come on, Chris, let's go.
The technique of surprise, Sandy. Very important, very important. It's Cord's whole technique. His whole style in that courtroom is built upon his ability to insinuate, to use certain words, his phraseology. But did I have some surprises for him? It wasn't his show this time, not by a long shot.
Yeah, you were really cool, Chris.
I'd like to have seen his face. Just once, I'd like to have seen his expression.
You made him sweat, all right.
I bet I did. I could feel him sweat. Funny how you can feel things when you can't see them. Compensation, they call it.
You hungry?
Speaking of feeling, this house feels rotten.
What did you expect?
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm just letting off steam.
That's okay.
You know, Sandy, you haven't said much to me ever since we were in court. Weren't you impressed?
Look, Chris, you don't fool me. All that stuff you were saying about technique and surprises. We both know what you did in that court.
Now, what is that supposed to mean?
Come off it, Chris. You may have fooled the judge with all that talk about justice, but this is me, Sandy. You lied. You sat in that witness chair and told lie after lie.
Listen, Lee killed Ann Howard, and you know it as well as I do.
How can you be so sure? He blinded you. You're trying to get even with him.
It is not like that at all.
Maybe so. Maybe you can make it fair and square in your mind. But when the judge and Mr. Fowler and Stephen Cord find out, they're going to call it something else. They'll call it perjury.
I did what I had to do.
They can fix it so you'll never become a lawyer. Was it worth it?
Yes, it was worth it. He's got to be stopped from destroying people. Ann Howard, me, you, somebody's got to stop him.
But why you?
Because nobody else will.
Oh, hi, Rita.
Hi, baby.
Matthew's asleep at last. I think he wore Mrs. Carson out. She's taking a nap.
Oh.
I guess you wanted to see them?
Yes, I did.
Well, could you drop by later tonight?
Sure. I guess there's no sense in hanging around, is there?
Rita? I hear Norman's going to college. That's great.
Yeah.
Betty?
I don't suppose you'll be able to take care of the baby much longer, will you?
Oh, well,
I mean, with all the things you have to do, like entertaining for your husband and that type of thing.
Well, I wasn't planning on leaving just yet. I think Mrs. Carson needs me.
Oh, I understand that, but probably in a few days you'll be needed at home, your own home. I guess when your husband's a busy lawyer, there's lots of things you have to do.
Yes, I guess there are.
But like with us, Norm's going back to school full-time. He'll be studying all night. I'll have a lot of free time on my hands. I wouldn't mind taking care of the baby or helping out at all. In fact, I'd like it.
Rita, I understand how you feel, but you see, I promised Mrs. Carson she could count on me. At least for the time being.
I see. Well, it was just a thought.
Rita, there'll be plenty of babysitting to do later on, and I'm sure Mrs. Carson will need your help. In fact, I'm sure you're number one on her list.
Great. Well, will you tell her that anytime she needs me, I'd be glad to. Anytime.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.